The huge crystal room of the Galactic Council was filled with worried voices as alien leaders from all over the galaxy came together for an emergency meeting. This wasn't a normal gathering. Something had scared them badly enough to call everyone. Here, immediately, Council Leader Vexthera stood at the center of the room, her many eyes staring at a floating hologram that showed a small blue and green planet spinning slowly in space. This little world, located in a quiet corner of the galaxy, had suddenly become the most terrifying thing these advanced aliens had ever seen. "The creatures living on this world call themselves humans," said Intelligence Director Colthanus, his voice shaking with fear. Even though he was one of the smartest beings in the galaxy, he looked genuinely frightened. "We've been watching them for some time now, and they just figured out how to travel faster than light. But that's not the scary part." The room fell silent. Every alien delegate leaned forward, waiting to hear what could possibly be so dangerous about these unknown humans. "The scary part," Colthanus continued, "is what we discovered about their history. These humans have been fighting wars with each other for thousands of years. It's not just small fights, but massive wars that killed millions of their own people. They've never had peace for more than a few decades at a time." A bird-like alien called a seraphim flapped her colorful wings nervously. "Wait, you mean they fight against their own species? That's impossible. No intelligent race would do such a thing." But Colthanus shook his head grimly. "It gets much worse. We studied how they solve problems, and it's completely insane. They don't follow any logical rules. Instead, they try random things until something works. They call it trial and error. Even more disturbing, they make important decisions based on feelings and emotions rather than facts and logic." The aliens in the room looked at each other with growing horror. In their perfectly organized galaxy, every species followed strict rules and made decisions based on careful calculations. The idea of beings who acted on emotions was like hearing about monsters from a nightmare. "We also discovered," Colthanus added, his voice dropping to a whisper, "that they actually seem to enjoy chaos and unpredictability. They have something called adventure, where they purposely put themselves in dangerous situations just for fun. They also create something called art, which has no logical purpose whatsoever." A tall gray alien with tentacles for arms raised one of his limbs. "Surely you're exaggerating. No species could survive being so chaotic and still develop space travel." "That's what makes them so dangerous," Colthanus replied. "They shouldn't have survived, but they did. And now they're heading toward our space. Our computer models show that if these humans enter our galaxy, they could destroy everything we've built over millions of years. Their chaotic nature could spread like a virus, making other species start acting unpredictably too." Council Leader Vextheta raised her forearms for silence. The room immediately went quiet. "My fellow council members, I have reviewed all the evidence. These humans are not just another new species we can welcome into our galactic community. They are a threat to our very way of life." She gestured toward the hologram of Earth, which continued spinning peacefully, unaware that its fate was being decided by aliens millions of light years away. "Throughout galactic history, we have maintained peace and prosperity by following established protocols and making logical decisions. Every species that joins our council agrees to follow these rules. But these humans, they cannot be trusted to follow any rules at all." The delegates nodded in agreement, their fear growing with each word. "Therefore," Vexthera announced, "I am calling for an immediate vote on Protocol 7. We must place an impenetrable barrier around their entire solar system before they can escape and spread their chaos to our civilized worlds." Protocol 7 was the most extreme measure in galactic law. It had only been used once before, thousands of years ago, to contain a species that had gone completely insane. The fact that they were considering using it again showed just how terrified they were. Of humanity, the vote was quick and unanimous. Not a single alien leader voted against it. Within hours, massive ships moved into position around the human solar system, creating an energy barrier so powerful that nothing could pass through it in either direction. The aliens believed they had solved the problem. They'd trapped the dangerous humans in their own system, keeping the galaxy safe from their chaotic influence. But they had no idea that their decision would soon come back to haunt them in ways they never imagined. Captain Minnow had been looking forward to this mission for months. The exploration vessel New Horizon was humanity's most advanced ship. Designed to push the boundaries of how far humans could travel into space, they were heading toward the edge of the solar system, farther than any human had gone before. But as they approached the outer planets, something appeared on their sensors that made Minho's blood run cold. Where there should have been empty space leading to the stars, there was instead a massive wall of crackling energy that stretched as far as their instruments could detect. "What in the world is that?" Minho muttered, staring at the readings that made no sense. The energy wall was perfectly smooth and seemed to curve around their entire solar system like a giant bubble. Lieutenant Sol Young worked frantically at her station, running every scan she could think of. Her face grew more worried with each passing minute. "Captain, this is definitely artificial. Someone built this thing. The energy patterns are completely unknown to us, but the structure is clearly designed to keep something in or out." Minho felt his jaw clench as the terrible truth began to sink in. "Are you telling me someone has built a wall around our entire solar system?" "It looks that way, sir. I'm detecting the same energy signature at every point where we might normally exit into interstellar space. Whatever this is, it's completely surrounding us." The bridge fell silent as the crew processed this information. They had dreamed of exploring the galaxy, of meeting other intelligent life forms and joining a larger galactic community. Instead, it seemed like someone had turned their solar system into a prison. Communications. Officer Taman suddenly looked up from his station with excitement. "Captain, I'm receiving a transmission. It's coming from the barrier itself." "Put it through," Minho ordered. A cold, mechanical voice filled the bridge. "Attention, human vessels. You are hereby ordered to remain within your designated boundaries. Any attempt to breach this containment field will result in immediate corrective action. This is your only warning." The message repeated several times before cutting off, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Minho slowly stood up from his captain's chair, his hands clenched into fists. After a moment, he began to laugh, but it wasn't a happy sound. "They've built us a cage," he said, his voice filled with bitter amusement. "Someone out there is so afraid of us that they've trapped us in our own solar system like dangerous animals." Lieutenant So Young looked confused. "Sir, we haven't done anything to anyone. We've never even met another alien species." "Apparently they've been watching us," Minho replied. "They don't like what they've seen." The captain turned to face his crew, and they could see the determination burning in his eyes. Well, whoever these aliens are, they clearly don't understand humans very well. They think they can just lock us up and we'll quietly accept it. About to learn otherwise? He pointed at the energy barrier on the main screen. "Sway Young, I want you to run every analysis you can on that thing. I want to know how it works, what it's made of, and most importantly, how we can break through it." Taman sent an immediate message to Fleet Command. "Tell them what we've found and that we're not backing down." "What should I tell them about our mission status?" Taman asked. Minho smiled grimly. "Tell them we're not going anywhere, except closer to this thing. If someone wants to cage humanity, they're going to have to deal with us fighting back. Every step of the way." Within hours, Minho's message had reached Earth and caused an uproar. The idea that aliens had secretly trapped humanity in their own solar system made people angry rather than afraid. Instead of retreating, dozens of human ships began heading toward the barrier. Over the following days, research stations appeared, all along the barrier's perimeter. Human scientists and engineers worked around the clock, studying the alien technology and looking for weaknesses. The aliens had expected humanity to be intimidated by their show of force, but instead, they had awakened something much more dangerous: human stubbornness and the refusal to accept being caged captain. Minho established the first permanent research station right next to the barrier, close enough that he could almost touch the energy wall. Every day, he stood on his observation deck and stared at the alien construction that kept his species trapped. "You made a mistake," he whispered to the unknown aliens who had imprisoned them. "You should have tried to talk to us first." Made this personal. On the beautiful crystal world of Zephyros, something terrible was happening that no one could explain. The planet looked like a giant jewel floating in space, with massive crystal formations that sparkled in the light of their twin suns. For millions of years, this world had been perfectly stable, a symbol of order and precision that the Zephyrian people were famous for throughout the galaxy. But now, Chief Scientist Thekmara stood in her laboratory, staring at computer readings that made no sense at all. Her hands were shaking as she looked at the data flowing across her screens. Deep inside their planet, something was going horribly wrong. "This can't be right," she muttered, running the analysis for the 100th time. "The planet's core has been stable for over 3 million years. There's no reason for it to suddenly start acting this way." Her assistant, a young Zephyrian named Veltar, looked over her shoulder at the disturbing numbers. "What exactly is happening down there?" The Kamara pointed to a series of wildly fluctuating graphs. The core is experiencing what we call quantum fluctuations. Basically, the very foundation of our planet is becoming unstable at the most basic level of reality. It's like the laws of physics are breaking down inside our world. The implications were terrifying. If the planet's core continued to destabilize, it wouldn't just crack or break apart slowly. The entire world would literally tear itself apart from the inside out, destroying everything and everyone on it. "Long do we have?" Velthar asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. Thekmara's voice was barely a whisper. "According to our calculations, there's a 97.3% chance that our planet will completely collapse within 4.7 months. That's less than 5 months before our entire civilization is wiped out." The news was too important and too frightening to keep secret. Within hours, Thekmara found herself standing before Emperor Zethkal. In the magnificent crystal palace that had been home to Zephyrian rulers for thousands of years, the Emperor was known throughout the galaxy for his calm, logical approach to every problem. Zephyrians prided themselves on never showing strong emotions and always finding rational solutions to any crisis. But when Thekmara explained what was happening to their world, even the Emperor couldn't hide his terror completely. "Solutions do our finest minds propose?" he asked, his voice steady, but his crystal-like skin flickering with nervous energy. Thekmara looked down at her reports, wishing she had better news to give. "My lord, we have consulted with every brilliant scientist on our world. We have run millions of computer simulations and tested every possible solution we can think of. None of our ideas have any significant chance of success." The Emperor's multiple eyes focused on her intently. "Explain." "The problem is chaos, my lord. The quantum fluctuations in our core are completely random and unpredictable. Our entire civilization is built on order, precision, and mathematical certainty. We can predict the movement of stars, the behavior of energy, and the flow of time itself. But this is pure chaos, and we have no idea how to handle it." Desperate for help, the Zephyrian government had secretly contacted the Galactic Council, hoping that other advanced species might have solutions they hadn't thought of, but the response had been just as disappointing. "What about the other species?" the Emperor asked. "Surely the combined wisdom of the galaxy can solve this problem." Thekmara's expression grew even more grim. "We've heard back from the Council, my lord. The crystalline collective, the energy beings, the machine intelligence, and dozens of other species have all studied our problem. Their best solutions show only a 0.02% chance of success. They are as baffled as we are." The Emperor stood up from his throne, his crystalline features becoming hard and sharp with determination. "That's impossible. There must be an answer. We are the Zephyrian Empire, masters of science and technology. We have solved every problem we've ever faced." "Is different, my lord," Thekmara replied sadly. "Every species in the galaxy thinks the same way we do. They all rely on order, logic, and predictable patterns. But chaos doesn't follow any rules. It's completely random and unpredictable. None of us have ever learned how to deal with that kind of problem." The Emperor walked to the great crystal window that looked out over his magnificent city. Below, millions of Zephyrians went about their daily lives, completely unaware that their world was dying beneath their feet. "So you're telling me," he said quietly, "that the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, with all our knowledge and technology, are helpless against simple chaos? Yes, my lord. We have less than 5 months to find a solution, or our entire civilization will be destroyed. Right now, we don't even know where to begin looking for help. The proud Zephyrian Empire, which had always believed that logic and order could solve any problem, was about to learn that sometimes the universe doesn't follow the rules. Somewhere in a distant corner of the galaxy, trapped behind an energy barrier, lived a species that had spent their entire existence learning how to thrive in chaos. Dr. Ji-hoon had always been the weird one among human scientists. While other researchers focused on neat, predictable equations, he spent his time studying chaos, the kind of messy, unpredictable patterns that most scientists tried to avoid. His colleagues often joked that his office looked like a tornado had hit it, with papers scattered everywhere and multiple coffee cups growing strange experiments of their own. But now, sitting in his tiny laboratory on Research Station Alpha, Ji-hoon's obsession with chaos might be exactly what humanity needed. The station floated just a few kilometers away from the alien energy barrier, close enough that he could almost reach out and touch the shimmering wall that kept humanity trapped in their own solar system. For weeks, Ji-hoon had been studying the barrier's energy patterns, trying to understand how the aliens had built something so powerful. His cramped lab was filled with holographic displays showing swirling patterns of energy that danced and shifted like living things. Most scientists would have given up by now, declaring the alien technology too advanced to understand. But Ji-hoon wasn't most scientists. He had spent his entire career studying things that other people said were impossible to predict or control. Weather systems, stock markets, the spread of diseases, all of these seemed random and chaotic to most people. But Ji-hoon could see the hidden patterns underneath. The fluctuations aren't random, he muttered to himself, adjusting his quantum resonance scanner for the 1,000th time. His hair was messy from running his hands through it, and he hadn't slept in over 30 hours. There's definitely a pattern here. But it's not the kind of straight-line pattern that most people look for. It's chaotic. His assistant, Dr. Young-soo, had been trying to get Ji-hoon to take a break for hours. But now something in Ji-hoon's voice made him look up from his own work and peer over his mentor's shoulder at the displays. "What do you mean by chaotic?" Young-soo asked. "I thought chaos meant there was no pattern at all." Ji-hoon's eyes suddenly lit up with the kind of excitement that Young-soo had learned to recognize. It was the look Ji-hoon got when he was about to make a breakthrough that would change everything. "That's what most people think," Ji-hoon said, his fingers flying across his control panels. "But chaos theory tells us that even the most random-looking systems actually have underlying patterns. They're just too complex for traditional mathematics to handle." He pulled up a new display showing weather patterns from Earth. "Look at this. Hurricane looks completely random and destructive, right? But if you understand chaos mathematics, you can actually predict where it's going to go and how strong it will be." Young-soo studied the swirling patterns on the screen, then looked back at the alien barrier data. "Are you saying the barrier works like a weather system?" "It's not exactly like weather, but the same mathematical principles apply," Ji-hoon explained, his excitement growing. "The aliens built this barrier using quantum energy fluctuations. To them, it probably looks perfectly stable and predictable. But to us, it looks chaotic because we're seeing patterns they didn't even know existed." Ji-hoon began pulling up more data, showing comparisons between the barrier's energy patterns and various chaotic systems from Earth. Stock market fluctuations, earthquake patterns, even the way crowds of people moved through city streets, all of them showed similar mathematical structures. "This is incredible," Young-soo breathed. "Human mathematics actually evolved to handle this kind of uncertainty. We've been dealing with chaos for thousands of years because our whole planet is full of unpredictable systems." "Exactly." Ji-hoon jumped up from his chair, nearly knocking over another coffee cup. While the aliens were developing mathematics to handle perfectly ordered systems, we were learning to surf the chaos. Our entire approach to problem solving is built on adapting to unpredictable situations. As the night wore on, Ji-hoon worked with an intensity that amazed even Young-soo. He began applying human chaos mathematics to the alien barrier, using the same principles that meteorologists use to predict weather and economists use to understand market crashes. Slowly, incredibly, the barrier's energy patterns began to make sense. Ji-hoon could see how the quantum fluctuations flowed and shifted, following rules that the aliens themselves probably didn't understand. And if he could understand the patterns, maybe he could find a way to disrupt them. Young-soo, we need to send this data to Earth immediately, Ji-hoon said, his voice filled with hope for the first time in weeks. I think we might have found our way out of this cage. Unknown to Ji-hoon, his transmissions to Earth were being intercepted by alien listening posts scattered throughout the galaxy. And on the dying crystal world of Zephyros, desperate scientists were reading his research with growing amazement, realizing that these chaotic humans might be the only ones who could save their civilization. Ambassador Cathara had never imagined she would find herself in such a shameful position. As one of the most respected diplomats in the Zephyrian Empire, she had spent centuries representing her people with pride and dignity. She had negotiated trade agreements with dozens of species, resolved conflicts between alien civilizations, and always carried herself with a graceful confidence that made Zephyrians famous throughout the galaxy. But now she stood in the shadows of a forgotten asteroid mining station, far from any civilized world, waiting to beg for help from the very species she had helped to imprison. The irony was almost too painful to bear. The mining station had been abandoned for decades, its dark corridors filled with the echo of her footsteps as she made her way to the secret meeting location. She had chosen this place specifically because it was so remote that no other alien species would detect their meeting. If word got out that she was negotiating with the quarantined humans, it could destroy her career and possibly start a war within the Galactic Council. Her crystalline hands trembled slightly as she waited in the cold conference room. Through the station's windows, she could see the distant stars, and somewhere among them was her dying homeworld. Every hour that passed brought Zephyros closer to complete destruction, and she was their only hope for survival. When the human delegation arrived, Cathara was surprised by how ordinary they looked. After years of hearing about these dangerous, chaotic beings, she had expected something more frightening. Instead, she saw a small group of humans who looked tired but determined, led by a middle-aged man with kind eyes and graying hair. Dr. Hanwoo had been chosen to lead the human negotiating team because of his reputation for fairness and his ability to stay calm under pressure. As Earth's top diplomat, he had handled countless difficult negotiations, but this was unlike anything he had ever faced before. Ambassador Cathara, he said politely, offering a slight bow that showed respect. Without submission, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. Your message mentioned a crisis that requires human assistance, which frankly surprised us all. Cathara struggled to find the right words. Her pride as a Zephyrian warred with her desperation to save her people, Dr. Hyanwoo. I must confess that that I personally supported the decision to quarantine your species. We believed you were too dangerous to be allowed into galactic society, and now, Hyanwoo asked, his expression carefully neutral. Now we are facing a problem that our most advanced scientists cannot solve, Cathara admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Our planet is dying, Dr. Hyanwoo. The core of our world is experiencing quantum fluctuations that threaten to destroy everything we have built over millions of years. She pulled out a small device that projected a holographic display of Zephyros, showing the chaotic energy patterns that were tearing her world apart from the inside. We have consulted with every species in the galaxy, she continued. The greatest minds of dozens of civilizations have studied our problem, but they are all as helpless as we are. The quantum chaos defies every mathematical model we have developed. Hyanwoo studied the display with growing understanding. But you think humans might be able to help? We have been monitoring your communications, Cathara said, looking ashamed. Your Dr. Ji-hoon's research into chaos mathematics has given us hope. Your species seems to understand patterns that we cannot even perceive. The barrier around our system remains in place. Hyanwoo pointed out quietly. You're asking us to help save your world while keeping us trapped in our own solar system. Cathara's crystalline features showed her internal struggle. I can arrange for the barrier's removal, but you must understand the political complexities. Many council members still fear your people's unpredictable nature. They believe that allowing humans into galactic space could destabilize everything we have built. Hyanwoo exchanged glances with his team members. They had discussed this possibility during their journey to the meeting, but hearing it confirmed was still shocking. The aliens were so desperate that they were willing to free humanity in exchange for help. Ambassador Heian-Wu said carefully, "We appreciate your honesty. And despite everything your people have done to us, we're not going to let an entire civilization die if we can prevent it. But we have conditions." "Name them," Cathara said immediately. "First, the barrier comes down before we lift a finger to help. We won't work from inside a cage. Second, we want full diplomatic recognition for humanity and a permanent seat on the Galactic Council. And third, we want a formal apology for the quarantine and compensation for the damage it has caused to our exploration programs." The alien's shoulders sagged as the weight of her people's survival settled on them. She had the authority to make these agreements, but she knew that many of her fellow council members would be furious. "Agreed," she said finally, her voice filled with both defeat and relief. "I will begin the process of removing the barrier immediately. But please, Dr. Heian-Wu, time is running out. We have less than 4 months before our world dies." The moment humanity had been waiting for finally arrived. After months of being trapped behind an alien energy barrier, the shimmering wall that had surrounded their solar system suddenly flickered like a dying light bulb. Then, with a sound like thunder rolling across space, it vanished completely. Captain Su-Jin stood on the bridge of her ship, watching through the main view screen as the stars beyond their solar system became visible for the first time in months. She had been chosen to lead the humanitarian fleet not just because of her skills as a captain, but because she had a reputation for staying calm in impossible situations. "All ships, this is Captain Su-Jin," she announced over the fleet communications. "We are now free to enter galactic space. Remember, we're not going out there as conquerors or explorers. We're going to save lives." Behind her ship, dozens of other human vessels followed in formation. Each ship was packed with scientists, engineers, and equipment that had been specially modified for their mission. They had spent weeks preparing for this moment, but nobody really knew what they would find when they reached the dying alien world. "Captain, we're receiving navigation data from the Zephyrian government," reported Navigator Dong Hyen. "There, guiding us directly to their homeworld. The journey will take about 6 hours at maximum speed." As the human fleet traveled through space, they passed wonders that took their breath away. Massive space stations that looked like floating cities, ships from dozens of different alien species, and cosmic phenomena that defied explanation. This was the galaxy that had been hidden from humanity, and now they were finally seeing it for themselves. "Approaching Zephyros now," Dong Hyen announced as they neared their destination. "Captain, you need to see this." The planet that appeared on their screens was unlike anything they had ever imagined. Zephyros looked like a giant jewel floating in space, its surface covered with massive crystal formations that caught and reflected the light from its twin suns. Under normal circumstances, it would have been one of the most beautiful sights in the galaxy, but there was something terribly wrong. The entire planet flickered and pulsed with unstable energy that made the crystal formations glow with an eerie, dangerous light. Even from space, they could see that the world was in agony. "The energy readings are terrifying," Dong Hyen continued, his voice filled with awe and fear. "I've never seen anything like this. The planet looks like it's literally tearing itself apart." Dr. Yunju, the fleet's chief physicist, had been studying the data streaming in from their sensors. She was one of the few humans who had worked closely with Dr. Ji-hoon on chaos mathematics, and she understood better than anyone what they were facing. "Captain, this is incredible," she said, her voice mixing fascination with horror. "The planet's core is experiencing quantum fluctuations that are cascading through the entire planetary structure. According to everything we know about physics, this world should have destroyed itself weeks ago." Captain Su-Jin studied the readings with growing concern, but it hasn't destroyed itself. "Why? Because the chaos isn't truly random," Dr. Yunju explained, her excitement growing as she began to understand what they were seeing. "There's an underlying pattern here, just like Dr. Ji-hoon theorized. The quantum fluctuations are following rules that the aliens can't see because they've never learned to recognize chaotic patterns. Within hours of arriving, human landing, craft were descending toward the crystal world's surface. The Zephyrian government had prepared landing sites near their major cities, and teams of human scientists were soon working alongside alien researchers who had been fighting the crisis. For months, the contrast between the two species was immediately obvious. The Zephyrians worked with precise, methodical approaches, using advanced computers and mathematical models to try to predict what the quantum chaos would do next. But their methods weren't working because chaos doesn't follow the kind of neat, orderly patterns they were used to. The humans, on the other hand, seemed to work almost by instinct. They would study the chaotic energy patterns for a few minutes, then suddenly announce that they had found a solution that the aliens hadn't even considered. To the Zephyrians, it looked like magic. "How do they do it?" asked one Zephyrian scientist. "Watching a human engineer named Tae-Hyen make adjustments to a stabilization device? They've been here for less than a day, and they understand our crisis better than we do." Dr. Youngju, who was working alongside the local scientists, smiled. "We've been dealing with chaos our entire lives. Every weather system on Earth, every economic crisis, every war, they all follow chaotic patterns. We learned to work with uncertainty because we had to." As the days passed, something remarkable began to happen. The human teams, using their intuitive understanding of chaos mathematics and their willingness to try unconventional solutions, started to bring stability to the quantum fluctuations that were destroying the planet. The Zephyrians watched in amazement as these chaotic beings began to make sense of the impossible. Using methods that seemed completely random to alien observers, the humans were actually finding the hidden patterns within the chaos and learning to control them. For the first time in months, there was hope on Zephyros. The planet that had been dying was slowly beginning to heal. It was all because humanity had finally been allowed to show the galaxy what they could do. The news of what happened on Zephyros traveled through the galaxy faster than anyone expected. Within days, every major alien civilization had heard the incredible story of how humans had saved a dying world that the galaxy's greatest minds had given up for lost. The story spread through quantum communication networks, whispered in alien marketplaces, discussed in the highest levels of government across thousands of worlds, for the first time since humanity had been quarantined. Alien species were talking about humans, not with fear, but with curiosity and hope, on the geometric crystal cities of the Crystalline Collective. Engineer Haewon was working late in her perfectly ordered laboratory when an encrypted message appeared on her communication console. The message came directly from the Collective's ruling council, which almost never contacted individual engineers directly. "Engineer Haewon," the message read, "we have a crisis that requires immediate attention. Our homeworld is experiencing dimensional fractures that are spreading throughout our reality matrix. Our finest scientists have declared the problem impossible to solve. Can your human contacts help us?" Haewon stared at the message in disbelief. The Crystalline Collective had been one of the strongest supporters of keeping humans quarantined. Their entire society was built on perfect geometric order and mathematical precision. The idea that they would ask for help from chaotic humans was almost unthinkable. But the dimensional fractures were real. Across their homeworld, reality itself was cracking like broken glass, creating zones where the laws of physics worked differently or didn't work at all. Their people were disappearing into these fractures. Their technology was useless against something that defied all logical explanation. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Dr. Sejin was experiencing something that no human had ever experienced before. She was sitting in her research laboratory on Earth when suddenly her mind was filled with alien thoughts that weren't her own. At first, she thought she was having a mental breakdown, but then she realized that someone was communicating with her telepathically. The voice in her mind belonged to the hive mind nexus, a species that shared all their thoughts and emotions. Through psychic connections, they had been studying Dr. Sejin's research into human consciousness and individual thinking patterns, and now they desperately needed her help. "Dr. Sejin," the alien voice said directly into her thoughts, "we face a plague that is destroying our mental connections. Our hive mind is fragmenting, and our people are going insane from the isolation. Your species' ability to think as individuals might be the key to saving us." These weren't the only requests for help. As word spread about humanity's success on Zephyros, more and more alien species began reaching out with their own impossible problems. The temporal guardians, who controlled time itself, were facing paradoxes that were causing past and future to collapse into each other. The energy beings, who lived as pure thought and light, were dealing with reality distortions that were making them lose their form. The machine collective, whose artificial intelligence had ruled their society for millions of years, was struggling with logic viruses that were causing their computers to behave irrationally. Each crisis was labeled impossible by the conventional science of the galaxy. These were problems that the most advanced civilizations couldn't solve. Situations that defied every mathematical model and logical approach that alien scientists had developed over millions of years. But to humans, these weren't impossible problems at all. They were just really complicated puzzles that required creative thinking and the willingness to try unconventional solutions. Dr. Wu Jin, who had been one of the lead scientists on the Zephyros mission, quickly realized that humanity was facing a historic opportunity. He established the Crisis Response Center, a new organization dedicated to coordinating human assistance to alien civilizations in need. We're getting requests for help from species that wouldn't even talk to us 6 months ago. He explained to his growing staff of human specialists. Each one of these problems is unique, but they all have one thing in common. They involve chaos, uncertainty, and situations that don't follow normal rules. The Crisis Response Center became the busiest place on Earth almost overnight. Teams of human engineers, scientists, philosophers, and even artists were being assembled to tackle problems that ranged from collapsing dimensions to psychic plagues to computer viruses that affected artificial intelligence. I want everyone to understand something important, Dr. Wu Jin told his staff during their first major briefing. We're not smarter than these alien species. Many of them have been developing science and technology for millions of years longer than we have. But we have something they don't have. We're comfortable with chaos. He gestured to a map showing the locations of all the crises they were being asked to help with. Every species in the galaxy evolved to handle order and predictability. They built their entire civilizations around the idea that problems have logical solutions and that the universe follows understandable rules. But we humans evolved on a planet full of chaos, unpredictable weather, natural disasters, economic crashes, and social upheavals. We learned to thrive in uncertainty because we had to. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The same traits that had made aliens fear humanity, their unpredictability, their emotional decision-making, and their ability to find solutions through trial and error, were now making them the most valuable problem solvers in the galaxy. As human teams prepared to spread across the galaxy to help civilizations in crisis, it became clear that everything had changed. The species that had once been considered too dangerous for galactic society were now its most important protectors. The magnificent crystal chamber of the Galactic Council had never seen anything like this before. For thousands of years it had been a place of order and unity, where alien species came together to make decisions based on logic and careful deliberation. But now the chamber was split down the middle like a battlefield, with two groups of aliens glaring at each other across the floor. On one side sat the traditional order faction, led by species that still believed humanity was a dangerous mistake that needed to be corrected. These aliens looked nervous and angry, their various forms of communication buzzing with complaints about how humans were disrupting the careful balance they had spent millennia building. On the other side sat a growing alliance of species that had personally experienced humanity's help during their darkest hours. These aliens looked hopeful and determined, speaking quietly among themselves about the miracles they had witnessed when human teams had solved problems that their own scientists had declared impossible. Council leader Vexthera stood at the center of the chamber, feeling more confused and overwhelmed than she had ever felt in her long career. She had been the one who had originally proposed quarantining humanity, convinced that they were too chaotic and unpredictable to be allowed into galactic society. Now she found herself trying to mediate between two factions that she had accidentally created. The situation has become complex, she admitted to her aide. was frantically trying to keep track of all the different arguments and proposals being thrown around the chamber. "Complex is putting it mildly," her aide replied. "Half the galaxy wants to give humans the highest honors we can bestow, while the other half wants to put them back in quarantine. And every day more species are switching sides as they hear about what humans have accomplished." The debate had been going on for hours, with neither side willing to give ground. The traditional order faction argued that humanity's methods were too unpredictable and could eventually destroy the stability that had kept the galaxy peaceful for millions of years. The Prohuman Alliance countered that humanity had already saved more lives in a few months than the Council had saved in centuries. Finally, Vexthera called for silence and gestured toward the human delegation. "Perhaps we should hear from the humans themselves before we continue arguing about their fate." Captain Minho stood up slowly, looking around the chamber at the hundreds of alien faces staring at him. He had never imagined that he would win. They'd be standing in the heart of galactic government, representing his entire species in a debate that would determine humanity's future. "Honored council members," he began, his voice calm and steady. "I want to make something very clear. We didn't ask to be feared by your people, and we didn't ask to be needed by them either. We simply offered to help when others couldn't find solutions to their problems." He gestured toward both sides of the divided chamber. "The choice of how to respond to that help is entirely yours. We're not trying to take over your galaxy or change your way of life. We're just trying to be good neighbors." Before anyone could respond, Ambassador Cathara stood up from the prohuman side of the chamber. The elegant Zephyrian diplomat had been one of humanity's strongest opponents during the quarantine. But her experience with the humans who had saved her world had completely changed her perspective. "Council members," she said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had lived through a crisis that most of them could barely imagine. "I was one of the strongest supporters of humanity's quarantine. I believed they were too dangerous and unpredictable to be allowed into our ordered society." She paused, looking directly at the traditional order faction. "I was wrong. These humans didn't just help us with our crisis. They saved our entire civilization when we faced extinction. Their methods may be unconventional, but their results speak for themselves." One by one, other species that had received human assistance began to stand up and share their stories. The representative from the Crystalline Collective spoke about how humans had repaired dimensional fractures that were destroying their reality. The delegate from the Hive Mind Nexus described how human individual thinking patterns had helped them overcome a psychic plague that was driving their people insane. Each story was more incredible than the last, and with each testimony, more aliens began to shift from the traditional order side to the Prohuman Alliance. They were witnessing something that had never happened before in galactic history, a complete transformation of how the galaxy operated. "The evidence is overwhelming," declared the representative from the energy beings, whose species had been saved from reality distortions by human intervention. "Humanity has proven that chaos and order can work together to create something better than either could achieve alone." The traditional order faction grew smaller and more desperate with each passing hour. Their arguments about stability and predictability seemed weak compared to the miraculous stories of lives saved and worlds preserved. As the debate continued, it became clear that something fundamental had changed in the galaxy. The old order of rigid protocols and predictable solutions was giving way to something new and unprecedented. A partnership between order and chaos, with humanity serving as the bridge between two different ways of thinking. The galaxy was evolving. And at the center of that evolution were the humans who had once been considered too dangerous to be allowed among the stars. 5 years had passed since the alien energy barrier around Earth had fallen, and the galaxy had become a completely different place. What had once been a rigid, orderly civilization governed by strict rules and predictable protocols had transformed into something vibrant, dynamic, and full of possibilities that no one had ever imagined. The old Galactic Council chamber had been demolished and replaced with something much more impressive, the Cooperation Center, a massive space station that orbited at the center of the galaxy. Unlike the cold, formal meeting rooms of the past, this new facility buzzed with activity as humans and aliens worked side by side on projects that would have been impossible just a few years earlier. Dr. Dayun stood at the front of the main briefing room, looking out at an audience that would have been unthinkable during the quarantine days. The room was filled with a mixture of humans and aliens, all wearing the same uniforms and working together as a single team. She had been chosen to lead humanity's Chaos Corps' specialized teams that tackled the problems other species couldn't solve. "All right, everyone," she began, her voice carrying the confidence that came from years of successful missions. "We've got a new crisis that needs our attention. Quantum architects are facing what they're calling a reality storm, a massive disturbance in space-time that's threatening to completely erase 3 entire star systems." The mixed audience of humans and aliens listened intently as she continued. Their conventional approaches have failed completely. The storm doesn't follow any of the normal rules of physics, and it's growing stronger every day. Millions of lives are at stake, and we're their last hope. Behind Dr. Dayun, the briefing room's walls displayed holographic images of the reality storm, a swirling mass of chaotic energy that defied description. To most species in the galaxy, it looked like certain doom. But to the humans in the room, it looked like just another interesting puzzle to solve. Teams 7 through 12 will handle the evacuation efforts, Dr. Dayun continued. Teams 1 through 6 will work on finding a way to stop the storm itself. Remember, we're not just representing humanity out there, we're representing the entire partnership. In the back of the room, Council Leader Vexthera watched the briefing with a mixture of amazement and regret. She had spent so many years convinced that humanity was a threat to galactic civilization. And now she served as the coordinator of an organization that couldn't function without them. After the briefing ended, she approached Captain Minho, who had become humanity's primary representative in the partnership government. "You know," she said quietly, "I still have trouble believing how wrong I was about your species." Minho smiled, the same easy smile he had worn when he first encountered the alien barrier all those years ago. "You weren't wrong about us being chaotic and unpredictable. You were just wrong about that being a bad thing. I spent so many years fearing what humanity might do to our galaxy," Vexthera admitted. "I never imagined that what you might do. We'll save it." "We didn't save the galaxy," Minho replied. "We just proved that sometimes the best solutions come from the most unexpected places. Your people had built an amazing civilization based on order and logic, but every system needs balance. The galaxy needed chaos to balance its order." Around them, the Cooperation Center hummed with activity as mixed teams of humans and aliens prepared for their latest mission. The bird-like seraphim, who had once been terrified of human unpredictability, now worked closely with human engineers and had learned to appreciate the value of intuitive thinking. The crystalline collective, whose entire society had been built on geometric precision, had discovered that flexible thinking could solve problems that rigid logic couldn't handle. Even the machine collective, whose artificial intelligence had once seen human emotions as a fundamental flaw, now included emotional subroutines in their programming to help them better understand complex situations. As the mixed teams departed for their latest mission, traveling in ships that combined human chaos theory with alien precision engineering, the galaxy hummed with new possibilities. Every day brought new challenges, but also new opportunities to prove that cooperation between different ways of thinking could achieve miracles. The species that had once been humanity's greatest fear had become their most valued partners. The universe had revealed itself to be stranger, more wonderful, and more hopeful than any of them had ever imagined. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy through military force or political intimidation. They had earned their place by proving that the very traits that made them feared, their unpredictability, their emotional decision-making, and their ability to thrive in chaos were exactly what the galaxy needed to face an uncertain future. The age of rigid order was over. The age of partnership had begun. And somewhere in the vast cosmos, new challenges were waiting to be met by beings who had learned that the greatest strength came not from perfection, but from the courage to embrace the beautiful chaos of existence. The galaxy would never be the same again, and that was exactly as it should be.